At first glance, they seem like symbols of progress, runways capable of accommodating the largest airplanes. Skyscrapers built to be the pride of a nation, projects that cost billions for the future. But now they're quiet, no lines, no passengers, no visitors. In this video, we'll look at 10 massive infrastructure projects built with huge ambition, but their original purpose was never fully realized. Before we start, please like and subscribe to this video. This means a lot to us content creators. Thank you. And now let's begin. Number 10, Ciudad Real Central Airport. In the middle of Spain, there's an airport that from afar looks like an active international hub. The runway is long. There's a full terminal. It has a control tower, cargo facilities, and spacious parking. This is Ciudad Real Central Airport. The project started in the early 2000s. During the period of rapid economic expansion in Spain, its goal was to become an alternative gateway outside Madrid and help accommodate the growing air traffic of the capital. On paper, everything was promising. The design was modern. The capacity was large. It could even accommodate the largest commercial aircraft in the world. But when it opened in 2008, the expected number of passengers did not arrive. Several airlines tried to operate here, but the traffic remained low. One of the biggest problems was connectivity. The transport links that were expected to connect this place to larger population centers were never fully completed. Then, the global financial crisis hit, and that's when the whole project started to collapse. After a few years, the operator went bankrupt. What was left was an almost complete international airport, but hardly anyone uses it. Until now, it remains one of the most well-known examples in Europe of infrastructure built for growth. But the economic collapse came first. Number 9, Ryugyong Hotel. If number 10 is an airport with no passengers, number 9 is a hotel with almost no guests. On North Korea's skyline, there's a building that's impossible not to notice. This is the Ryugyong Hotel. Its construction began in 1987 as the country's landmark luxury hotel. It was supposed to have over 3,000 rooms, including restaurants, observation areas, and other luxury facilities. At its height of approximately 330 meters, it would have been one of the tallest hotel buildings in the world. Construction was fast at first, but in the early 1990s, it suddenly stopped. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, North Korea faced severe economic hardship, and this affected major projects in the country, including this hotel. For many years, it remained an unfinished concrete shell standing in the middle of Pyongyang. Eventually, it was fitted with a glass exterior and LED lighting, which gave it a more modern appearance from the outside. But until now, publicly available information about its interior remains limited, and it is still unclear if it has ever become fully operational as a hotel. 2 different countries, 2 different projects, but it's a single reminder that no matter how big the budget is, no matter how beautiful the blueprint, and no matter how ambitious the vision, it's not always enough. Aside from just building, you also need demand, you need timing, and most of all, you need a world that's ready to use it. Number 8, Montreal Mirabel International Airport. In the northwest of Montreal in Canada, there's a vast aviation complex that remains quiet to this day. Huge buildings, old terminals, and runways that seemed ready for millions of passengers, but it never reached its full potential. This kind of infrastructure doesn't just end up in this state for no reason. Usually this is the result of intense optimism about economic growth, extensive government planning, and predictions about the future that don't always match reality. In the 1970s, Canada launched one of its largest airport projects. Based on historical records of transport planning in Canada, the goal was to make Montreal the main international gateway for the future of air travel in North America. Mirabel was built outside the city center with the aim of providing ample space for expansion and avoiding the congestion of urban airports. On paper, the plan looked perfect. Vast land, modern design, and capacity suited for the expected increase in passengers. But in actual operation, problems gradually emerged. One of the biggest issues was the location. It was far from the center of Montreal, And according to transport planning assessments, the planned direct high-speed rail link to the city was not immediately implemented. Because of this, access became difficult and slow for passengers and airline operations. On the other hand, the old airport in the city area, Montreal-Trudeau International Airport, remained more practical for airlines. It was closer, easier to reach, and more efficient for daily operations. As the years went by, the number of passengers at Mirabel gradually decreased. The expected massive growth in international travel did not happen as quickly as the planners anticipated. Because of this, many parts of the airport were unused for a long time, and some facilities gradually became obsolete. In the early part of the year, 2,000 most passenger flights were transferred back to the main airport in Montreal. Because of this, Mirabel completely lost its status as a commercial passenger hub. However, its structure remained with the check-in halls, access roads, and vast spaces left without normal operations. Some parts were demolished in the following years due to maintenance costs and safety concerns, but a large portion of the original structure still remained. From the perspective of an infrastructure analyst, this is often used as an example of a project that did not fail due to engineering failure, but because of strategic miscalculation, especially in demand forecasting, connectivity, and airline behavior. Mirabel is a reminder that in large projects, size and ambition are not enough. Location, access, and actual economic activity must also align. Until now, it remains a silent monument to a future that was once hoped for, but never fully arrived. Inside the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, there are large facilities that once served as the center of one of the most ambitious space programs of the Cold War. After the success of the United States space shuttle, the Soviet Union also tried to create their own version. According to historical records of the Soviet space program and reports analyzed by NASA and space historians, this became the Buran program, a reusable shuttle system accompanied by a complete industrial infrastructure for assembly and launch. Number 7. Baikonur Buran Assembly and Launch Infrastructure. Large assembly halls, launch facilities, fuel systems, and transport networks were built inside Baikonur exclusively for the Buran spacecraft. One of the most well-known is the massive assembly building where the orbiter and rockets are prepared before launch, a gigantic industrial hangar that can accommodate the entire spacecraft. In 1988, the Buran program accomplished an unmanned orbital flight. According to Russian Space Agency historical data and NASA comparative assessments, it successfully returned to Earth without a crew, a technical milestone in aerospace history. But just a few years later, everything changed. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, central funding for such large-scale projects suddenly disappeared. According to Space Policy Analysis, the Buran program was no longer prioritized due to the severe economic crisis and the country's restructuring. In 1993, it was completely canceled. After that, the facilities were gradually abandoned, maintenance stopped, security was reduced, and the structures began to deteriorate due to weather and rust. There were also reports that in the early 2000s, part of a large building collapsed, and the remaining hardware of the program was destroyed. Today, some parts of Baikonur are still active for modern space launches, but the Buran-specific facilities are hardly used anymore. What remains is a vast complex that seems frozen in time. It's a reminder that advanced technology can disappear not because of failure of engineering, but because of the collapse of the system that supported it. Number 6, Hellinikon International Airport. Built back in 1938, Hellinikon became the main airport of Athens for many decades. According to Greece's historical aviation records, it expanded even more after World War II, as the demand for air travel in Europe also grew. As Athens developed into a denser and more modern city, the location of the airport gradually became a problem. The areas around it grew, became residential, and became more sensitive to noise and safety concerns. In the 1990s, the Greek authorities decided to build a new airport farther from the city center. This is the Athens International Airport in Sparta, designed for greater capacity and long-term expansion. According to the official transport transition records, When the new airport opened in 2001, all commercial flights were transferred. At the same time, Hellinikon was completely closed as a passenger airport. This was not a gradual reduction of operations. Instead, the transition was almost immediate. From an active hub, it became an inactive complex in just a short period of time. After the closure, the vast infrastructure was left behind. Runways, taxiways, hangars, and terminal buildings remained intact but unused. In the following years, access and maintenance to some parts of the site gradually became limited. There are also reports from urban development studies in Greece that some parts of the former airport were temporarily used during the Athens Olympics in 2004. But after that, it was once again abandoned and was no longer fully utilized. For many years, it became the center of debate for redevelopment as parks, housing, and commercial zones. But it was delayed due to legal issues, funding limits, and political changes. Even though there have been some redevelopment efforts, a large part of the former airport is still not fully utilized. At present, Hellinikon is an example of infrastructure that was not destroyed, but was replaced by a strategic decision, a large aviation complex in the middle of Athens that gradually lost its former use. Number 5, Cincinnati Subway. Underneath Cincinnati in the United States, there is a vast underground rail system that remains hidden beneath the city to this day, a project whose physical construction was almost finished, but never became operational. It started in 1920. At a time when the population was rapidly increasing and traffic was worsening in industrial cities in America, according to the historical records of Cincinnati city planning, an underground subway loop was proposed to connect the main districts and reduce congestion on the surface roads. The voters approved the funding, so excavation began along Central Parkway. Within a few years, they built more than just a simple tunnel. There were stations, platforms, concrete linings, drainage systems, and ventilation systems that were really made for full rail operation. But in 1927, it suddenly stopped. According to the urban infrastructure analysis, there were many factors behind it: rising costs compared to the original budget, limited federal support, and the rapid increase in the use of automobiles that changed the transport demand of cities. A few years after this, the Great Depression hit, which ended any chance of continuing the project. The result was a fully built underground system that never operated as a subway. Until now, the tunnels remain beneath the city. According to city inspections, many parts are structurally stable and are now only used for utilities such as fiber optic cables and drainage infrastructure. But its original function as a mass transit system was never realized. The Cincinnati subway illustrates how a project can advance far in construction, but become obsolete due to shifts in the economy, technology, and transit stage, but ultimately become obsolete due to changes in the economy, technology, and behavior. Number 4, Prora complex. On the shores of the Baltic Sea on Rügen Island in Germany, you can find Prora, a massive seaside structure built during the time of Nazi Germany as part of the Strength Through Joy program. According to historical records from the German Federal Archives and post-war studies, construction began in 1936. The plan, according to historical accounts, was for a giant resort complex that could accommodate up to 20,000 people as a mass leisure facility for German workers. Its design was not focused on luxury, but on standardization and volume. It was composed of 8 long concrete blocks stretching for several kilometers along the coast. Each building had identical layouts of small rooms facing the sea, along with shared dining halls, theaters, and recreational spaces. But in 1939, World War II broke out. According to historical accounts, construction was suddenly halted because resources and labor were redirected to the war effort. The buildings were left with almost finished exterior shells, but the interiors were incomplete. They were never used for their original civilian purpose. After the war, the area came under Soviet-controlled East Germany. It was used for some military and limited functions, but a large part remained unused. When East Germany fell in 1990, any structured use of the complex disappeared once again. In the following decades, it remained almost abandoned because of the massive size of the buildings and the high redevelopment cost. It was also gradually affected by weathering. even though the concrete structure remained sturdy. In modern development, some parts were turned into hotels, museums, and apartments, but it was never a full transformation. There are still large areas that are not being used. Prora is often mentioned as an example of infrastructure that did not disappear physically, but lost its original function. An entire coastal megastructure that was built because of political ambition, but was never fully used according to the original plan. Number 3, Salton Sea. In Southern California, between Imperial and Coachella Valley, you can find the Salton Sea, a large inland lake that was accidentally formed in 1905 when the Colorado River flooded and entered a low basin. According to environmental history and U.S. geological studies, attempts were later made to turn it into a tourist attraction and recreational destination. In the mid-20th century, local and state authorities pushed for the development of resort areas around it. Marinas, yacht clubs, hotels, boat ramps, and residential communities like Bombay Beach and North Shore were built, relying on the idea that the place would become a permanent inland vacation spot. But the main problem is, it's a natural system with no outlet. According to the U.S. Geological Survey and environmental reports, over time, agricultural runoff entered and increased the salinity of the water. The fish population started to decline, algae blooms worsened, and the water quality eventually deteriorated. By the late 1970s to early 1980s, the situation became worse. There were fish die-offs, foul water conditions, and a gradual exodus. Because of this, people and businesses left, tourism declined, and a lot of infrastructure was abandoned. As the water level dropped, marinas and shoreline developments were left on dry land, and boats, resorts, and facilities that used to be for active waterfront use became stranded and useless. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, some restoration projects were later attempted by state and federal agencies. But according to environmental assessments, the impact is still limited, and it has not yet restored the former recreational function of the Salton Sea. For now, it remains an example of how changes in the natural environment can bring down an entire human-built system, even if it is vast, expensive, and well-planned. When a city grows and transportation technology changes, there are older infrastructure systems that, even though they are very expensive and historic, gradually lose their usefulness, not because they were damaged, not because they are no longer suitable for the new era. Number 2, Tempelhof Airport. In the south of central Berlin in Germany, Tempelhof started as a military parade ground in the 19th century before becoming an aviation site in the early 20th century. According to historical aviation records of Germany, it was further expanded during the Nazi regime as part of the ambition to create one of the largest airports in the world. The massive terminal building, which was started in 1936, was designed on a grand scale, stretching over a kilometer long and featuring integrated hangars, offices, passenger areas, and underground connections. It was one of the largest building complexes in the world at that time. Although the original grand vision was not completed due to the outbreak of World War II, the airport became fully operational and was used for both civilian and military aviation. One of the most well-known parts of its history was during the Berlin airlift from 1948 to 1949. According to Allied historical records, Tempelhof was used as the main lifeline of West Berlin after the Soviet Union blocked land access to the city. During that time, airplanes landed one after another, bringing food, fuel, and supplies for the residents. After the Cold War era, its importance in commercial aviation gradually declined. Airplanes brought food, fuel, and supplies for the residents. After the Cold War era, its importance in commercial aviation gradually declined. Its runway was no longer suitable for larger modern aircraft, while the new airports in Berlin were more efficient and had greater capacity. Because of this, Tempelhof was finally closed to commercial flights in 2008 after more than 80 years of operation. The former airport was turned into a large public park called Tempelhof Airfield, where the old runways are now used for walking, cycling, and recreational activities. But even though the use of the open space has changed, the large terminal and other aviation structures remain intact, no longer connected to their original function. Tempelhof is a clear example of an infrastructure project that was not destroyed but became obsolete, a place that was once a center of air power and logistics. But eventually, it was no longer suitable for new technology and the needs of modern aviation. When a large-scale infrastructure depends on nuclear energy, the margin for error is almost zero. A single incident can stop not only the operation, but also the entire expansion of an industrial system. In this situation, what remains are half-finished structures whose construction will never resume. This is one of the most significant examples of such an event in the history of nuclear energy. And lastly, Chernobyl nuclear power plant units 5 and 6. In northern Ukraine, near Pripyat, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant was part of the large Soviet nuclear energy program during the Cold War. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, it was designed as a multi-reactor complex using the RBMK 1000 system for large-scale power production. In the early 1980s, 4 reactors were operational, while Units 5 and 6 were already at an advanced stage of construction, with turbine halls, reactor buildings, and supporting structures almost completed, especially Unit 5, which was estimated to be over 70% finished. But on April 26, 1986, Reactor 4 exploded during a safety test, releasing radioactive material that spread to different parts of Europe, according to nuclear incident reports. After this, the entire expansion was stopped. Units 5 and 6 were left unfinished with concrete shells, partial piping, and unfinished industrial systems. Until now, they remain inside the Chernobyl exclusion zone, along with the abandoned cranes and reactor structures frozen in time. This is not just an abandoned project, but a direct result of a nuclear disaster that completely halted an entire industrial expansion. A clear example of how a moment of disaster can bring an entire project to a standstill.